Okay, welcome back to our third tutorial in this Trippy Nature series. This one we're going to be breaking down how I did this shot here, which is sort of this water droplet that then comes down and smashes into a stump and all these leaves go flying everywhere. So for this you're going to need Cinema 4D and Forester and Redshift and X particles also. So there's not really a whole lot of like crazy new stuff, you know, at least not to me, but you might learn something. So I'm just going to kind of go through how I made this. So let's get started. The first thing I did is I just started by kind of building my composition. So I put down a plane, give it a few more segments, maybe like 50 by 50, make it bigger, something like that. Then I put down a camera, I zero it out, move it up just a bit, something like that, maybe back. Okay, and then let's put down a cube just for now. Whoa, holy shit, that's a giant cube. Cube just for now, just so I can have something central to kind of focus on, so I can sort of see my scale and everything. So that looks about right. Okay, so this is going to be the ground, so it's going to be kind of our dirt patch, I guess, and I want it to look a little more natural. So I'm going to put this plane inside of a displacer, and for the shading, let's use, whoop, get out of here. Let's use noise. Let's make this a lot bigger. Something like that, maybe. And then let's move the height up just a little bit. Kind of don't want this dip right here. Maybe just down, just enough to give it some variation. Let's offset this a little bit, or change the seed or something. That looks better. Okay, let me save this really quick too. Just save it to my desktop for now. We'll call this tutorial in case my stuff crashes. My computer's been crashing a lot today. I don't know. Do you guys ever have bad PC days? Sometimes you just wake up and your PC just sucks for no reason. Today is one of those days. Hopefully tomorrow will be better. Cool. So then I had this stump in the middle. So I used a Megascans asset. And if you guys don't have Megascans, I would highly recommend getting a subscription to that. It is so worth it. They have so much great stuff, so many great textures, and they have models and stuff now, all these amazing 3D scans. And they're constantly updating it. So let me grab that really quick. That's Megascans, assembly assets, and it's this mossy tree stump. And I use the level of detail 0 one. So if you don't know, these LOD 5 through 0, whatever, if you ever download these, those are different levels of detail. So 5 is the lowest, meaning if you bring that model in, it's going to have the fewest polygons. And 0 is the highest, so it has the highest amount of polygons and the most detail. So depending on what you're doing, you know, you may want to use different ones. For this, I knew I was going to be a little closer up, and it's not really that big of a model anyway, so I'm just going to bring in the one that has the most polygons. And I don't know why I just opened that in a new file. I meant to bring it into this file. Idiot. Okay, let me pull out just a little bit more. I think this needs to be bigger. Okay, so then kind of position your stump how you want it. Let me get out of my camera really quick. It kind of like, maybe that's good. My displacer, I think I need to increase the noise scale a little bit so that it's not quite so repetitive. Oops. Just kind of put it there for now. Maybe, yeah, like that. Just somehow. Just put it however you want it. Okay. And we'll come back to texturing that in a little bit. But for now, we're just going to keep building the composition. So the next thing is I wanted sort of this to be like a big clearing with like a circle of trees around this. So I use Forester. That's an awesome plugin. So I just put down a Forester tree. And if you click on the tree and then go over to the branch library, tree library, the tree I used was mangrove. I think I might have used another tree too, can't remember. It's been like months since I opened that file. But let me find the mangrove tree. Why am I not seeing it? Red Oak, Senegalia. Well, doesn't matter too much what tree you use. You can use whatever you want. I'm trying to find where's the one that I want. Whatever. Oh, mangrove, right there. Didn't see it. Okay, so when you double click on it, it brings in a tree with no leaves. The leaves are actually there, but you see how they have this viewport levels and this render levels here? So if I rendered this, it would render with a bunch of leaves. But for the viewport, for the performance, the default is 3. So if I increase this to 4, you'll see some leaves. And if I increase it to 5 to equal the render levels, that's how many leaves are going to be on it when you actually render it. So, but it slows down your viewport a little more. So I'm going to keep this at like 4 for right now, just for better viewport performance. And then you have some cool, you've got some great parameters in here. They make it so easy. In fact, let me just put this down to 3 while we're shaping the tree for now. But you can adjust the overall tree size. If you go into the trunk parameters, you can increase the radius of the trunk or the trunk height without increasing the branches. Give it more sides, which gives it more. I don't know if you can see that, more definition, more polygons, whatever. We probably don't need that many sides because it's going to be kind of far away. And then you have all this great deformation stuff down here. Just if you don't really know what these do, I encourage you to just play around with them. Half of them I don't really know what they do. I just kind of move things until it looks right. You can do displacement in the trunk, so you see that you get some like little displacement, I guess. You can bend the trunk. You can make it change the direction, bend it, have the bend power, and you can animate all these things too, which is really cool. I think for now, though, what I want to do is make a thicker trunk, and then go into the branch level 1, or branch global, and let's see, I think I want to increase the radius of those two so it doesn't look like this weird paper tree ring with stupid little branches sticking out of them. So I think that's in, let's see, branch length, branch radius. So let's go like that. Let's make the length a little bit more, like that. And then branch level 2, that's sort of the next branch chain. So let's go like that. Make the length on those a little more. Branch level 3, radius, something like that. Make the length just a little more. Cool. You got yourself a tree, baby. Put that back up to 5 and see what that looks like. Cool. Good enough. So you can play around more. You can pick, whatever tree you want. You can distort it however you want. But for now, I'm just going to use the one tree, and just to kind of give you an idea of how I built this. I think I actually used 2 or 3 different types of trees just to kind of vary it up, but it doesn't really matter too much. I'm just kind of building a composition right now. So let's place this like here, and if you hit Control, Shift, and Z, that goes back a few steps, but only for your camera. If you hit Control Z, it goes back, it goes back. It's like an undo for the last action you did, but Control Shift Z undoes the camera move. So I'm going to get my camera back to here, roughly. Just kind of positioning it where I'm actually going to be seeing stuff. So okay, cool. So I've got this. Let's kind of put that below there. So one thing, we're going to put a bunch of trees on here, and I want to be able to sort of individually position them and scale them and rotate them and stuff. And if I use a cloner or something, I don't have that much control. I can randomize things, I can scale them, but I want to be able to individually position these. So there's a handy little thing that took me like 3 years to learn what it actually is, but it's so easy and so great. If you click on your tree and you come up to this little button, I'm using R20. If you're using R22 or 23, you might have to like go in, click and hold and find it, but it's the instance. And if you just click it, it makes a new little instance right here, which is another tree. However, the cool thing about this is it's not like real actual geometry like this one is, so it doesn't take up as much memory. So it's like when you put things inside of a cloner and you can change it to an instance or a render instance or a multi-instance, and it makes it go really, you could crank up the amount of clones and it makes the viewport performance a lot better. It's the same exact concept, except you're able to just move things around however you want. So I'm going to use instances for this, and I'm going to maybe go like that, bring it here, and then copy it, and then if I want to scale it up or down, you need to go into object mode, and then you can go like that. Maybe move it a little bit like that. Another one. Maybe bring it down. I don't know, like it's embedded in the ground or something. Just kind of trying to fill the space a little bit. Maybe go here, rotate it. Cool. Let's do another one here. Something like that. These are all going to be kind of in the background and blurred out, so it doesn't matter if they're intersecting a little bit. All you're going to see, as long as there's a lot of them, it's just going to feel like a dense forest thing. So, cool. That's placing them. And you might want to place them in a ring all the way around here. So the next thing, let's talk about a little bit of texturing and light, maybe. Before we move on. So first, let's put a sun in here. So I like to use, instead of the physical sun, I like to go to Objects and Sun and Sky Rig. For whatever reason, it just seems to give me a better look. And then let's change our render settings here. Go to Redshift, GI, change this to brute force, irradiance point cloud, and change it to 5 bounces. Okay, cool. And then let's fire up the render view. Make this smaller. Okay. And then let me put a Redshift camera tag on here. I like to put the exposure on, enable it, makes things brighter a little bit. And then in the Redshift sky, let's come here into under sky and change this from Hosek Willicke or whatever to that thing. It's a personal preference. Hosek Wilski is a little bit more golden. This one's a little bit more bright and white. And then you see there's this like gray lump thing back here. That's the horizon. So if I go to the horizon height and move this down a bit, ooh, it's very sensitive. So you can just put it however you want it. Okay, and then let's grab this thing, go to coordinates, move this around, maybe like that. So just so some of the trees cast some shadows, it looks a little nicer. Maybe there. Something like that. Cool. Okay, so let's talk first about, well, let's put the textures on the stump first, okay? So that's just the easiest thing. So let's make a new material, throw it on the stump, and we are going to be using the ACES workflow. Now, if you don't know what ACES are, there's a lot of tutorials about how to use them. It's a free plugin that you can download and install. If you're using a newer version of Redshift, which I am not, it actually comes in Redshift and it's way easier than what I'm doing. It's like one button and it turns it on. But I'll show you how to do it if you don't have it as part of Redshift. Assuming you already have it installed, which this is not a tutorial about how to install it. You just go to change your display mode to OCIO, and then that's pretty much it. And then in your textures, there's one extra step that I'll show you right now. So we're going to call this trunk. Okay, let's make this little smaller so you can actually see what I'm doing. I'm used to working on 2 screens, so forgive me for my inefficiency of use of space here. I'm used to spreading out a lot. So let's make a texture. 3D assets, textures, megascans. Assembly is the mossy tree stump, and we want the albedo. Okay, and then we're also going to want the roughness and the normal. And we might want the displacement too, but let's bring it in and see. If we don't need it, then we'll delete it. Okay, so we're going to hook these all up in a second here, but the first thing you need to do for the ACES workflow is move your mouse cursor off of the texture, the grid thing, over somewhere else and hit Shift-C, type pool, hit enter, and then under this ACES color, twirl it down and then grab this and drag it here. That's pretty much it. So you've basically, you want to plug this into here and then this into your diffuse. And for the ACES workflow, that's pretty much all you need to do. One extra step I like to do is drop down a color correct, plug the diffuse into that first, then plug that into the ACES thing. So that way it gives me a little more control later on down the road. If I don't like the way that looks, you know, I can adjust the gamma, make it darker, make it lighter, whatever. Okay, cool. So we've got our diffuse hooked up. Let's plug in the roughness. And the normal is going to need a bump map. No, not a bump blender. God. Bump map. Change it from height field to tangent space normal. Plug that into there. And that into overall bump. So let's see, it's processing. Come on. Here we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, now the roughness, you know, that stump looks a little shiny to me. So I'm going to click on the roughness, hit enable gamma override, and then move the gamma down, and that makes it way more rough. I want a very diffuse, very woody feeling wood, not shiny CG wood. And then the displacement, I'm just going to leave that off for now. It's fine. Okay, so there's that. Now let's talk about how to take your trees and texture them, because the trees come with these sort of default Cinema 4D textures. And let me actually move in a little closer so you can see them. They're not great. I mean, you know, they still show up in Redshift. And honestly, if I left them the way they were, since these are in the background, you know, you might not even notice. But I like to turn them into Redshift textures because it looks better to me anyway. You have a little more control. So I'll show you how to do that. It's really easy. So first, let's make a texture. We're going to call this trunk. We're going to open it. Okay. And then we're also going to open this one. And then in the color, we're going to find this thing. We're going to hit Control-C to copy it. And then we're going to make a texture. Oops, sorry, hit Shift-C and type text. And then we're going to paste that path right there. And then again, same thing, we need a color correct. And then hit Pool for Espresso Pool, bring that guy in here. So connect that to that. And this guy here, do a little organization, bring it up. Diffuse color. Cool. Alright, and it doesn't look like, I don't think the original material doesn't really have any like reflectance or anything else. It really only has this one map. So that's fine. I'll show you how to take that map and turn it into other stuff too. So to apply that, an easy way to do that, you could drag it up here and just replace it, but I like to just click on it, hold Alt, and then move it over the one you're trying to replace, and then let go, and it'll replace every instance of that with your new texture. Now you can see ours is super shiny because we don't have any roughness map. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this original texture, we're going to type ramp, and plug it into the ramp. Now if you don't know, a ramp is a great way to turn things black and white. So if I pipe this into the output, you'll see it gives me a nice black and white map, which I can then control. I can make it darker, or I can make the whites whiter, or whatever I want to do. You know, gives me some control. But I'm going to leave it just there, and then I'm going to plug this into the reflection roughness. It didn't seem to do a whole lot. Oh, you know what? I know why. Let's duplicate this actually. Let's change this to, let's enable the gamma override, and then again bring this way down. There we go. Much better. Okay, cool. Now there's no bump or anything, it's totally smooth. So same thing, what we're going to want to do is make another ramp, take this diffuse texture so it makes it black and white, put down a bump map. Height field is fine, that's what you want when you have a black and white map. And then we're going to plug this into overall bump. And then let's give it like, let's see what, like, crank it up to 5 and make sure it's doing something. Cool. So look, so there it is with bump. Let's disable it. There it is without. Looks better with bump, right? And now we have this color correct, which we can then, you know, make things way lighter. We can make it way darker. Let's make it light, and then, you know, change the hue, or make it dark. You know, increase the saturation to 1.3 or like 2, so that, you know, you can make crazy colors, kind of. Hue shift, but I'm going to go reset to default. Change this to 0, back to 1. So I just want, the default's fine for now. Okay, so that's the trunk. Now let's do the leaves. So, you know, I think the trunk is important, but the best part about, the biggest benefit to transferring your materials here from the default ones into Redshift ones is the leaves, and I'll show you why. Because right now, the default materials, they don't have any transparency or anything like that. You don't really get any subsurface scattering like a real leaf would. So they're just kind of flat and papery feeling. So let me show you what a difference it'll make. So let's open this up. We'll open up the leaf. And again, it only has a color channel. It doesn't have anything else. So we're going to click this, copy it, drop down a texture, paste it, okay, and then pool there. You know, I should probably just get the new version of Redshift so I don't have to go through all these steps with the aces. It'll just be like one button and it's done. Color correct. So plug that in there, just like before. Okay, and then again, we need to take this and replace the leaf. See what that does. Cool, so they're all replaced. You can see it's kind of shiny now because we don't have any reflectance or anything. So again, I'm going to want to duplicate this, put down a ramp, same as before. Oops. Plug this into the roughness. Now leaves are usually a little waxier, so it's okay if they have a little bit of shine to them. I still like to enable this, maybe make it just a little bit drier feeling, but see how they're a little more shiny. This is like totally diffuse. This is very shiny. I'll put it like down here. Okay. Now, the next thing is take these two, oops, take these two things, duplicate them, and we're not going to put a bump map in this, by the way. If we were like super close on the leaves, you probably want a bump map, but they're so tiny right now, it doesn't matter. So, we're going to work on the transparency. I'll show you a little trick. So you take your diffuse material, plug it into this second color correct thing, and take this and put this right into your backlight translucency color. Now I didn't do anything yet because we have to go into the base properties of your material, and right here where it says backlight translucency, if you increase the weight, That's showing how much light can shine through. So you see the difference? Here it is with 0. The leaves are pretty dark, so pay attention to the shadows. See how dark these shadows are here? But when I increase it, all the shadows get a little lighter because it's letting more light in. Now currently, the color of the light that's shining through these is the same as the color of the leaves. But something that's cool that I learned a long time ago is if you take this color correct and you change it to be a little bit more yellow on a green leaf, if you make it a little more yellow, it looks a lot more realistic. So let's just change the hue a bit. So that's like blue, purpley. And in fact, let's just pipe this right into the output just to see exactly what color we're making. So we got like red, it's kind of a yellow. We want sort of it's back to green. We want somewhere like right here. So here it is without, here it is with. I think it feels a lot more natural with. It's a subtle difference, but it's worth it to me. It makes a difference. Cool. Okay, so back to our camera. All right, what's next? Let's texture the ground. And I'm trying to remember what texture I used. So let's go back to my original file, the stump explode file. It was ground. Let's see what this is. Real displacement. In fact, I'm just going to grab this texture. And we're going to go to tutorial. Copy it. So I'm just going to throw that on there. So the reason I'm just cheating and not showing you is because it's literally the same process as before. I didn't really change much. I mean, I'm using a texture from Real Displacement Textures. It's this Leaves 04. You know, I literally did the same thing. It's just, let me fire this up so you can see. It's just the diffuse going into a color correct. It looks like I changed the hue a little bit from this to this. Oh, well, I'll come back to that. The roughness goes into the roughness, normal goes into the bump, and the depth, which is the displacement, goes into the displacement. And I think I must be using displacement, so to get that to work, put a Redshift object on your plane, geometry, override, click that, enable it, change this to like 10, and then bump this up to like 2 or 10. Let's see. There. Now we got leaves. So one thing, there is a little trick here that I am doing. So in the past textures, we just did the color correct right into the aces thing. But this time, what I did was I intercepted it first with a ramp. So like we used before with a ramp, if you put down a normal ramp, it comes in black and white and it changes things to black and white. But a little trick is in the ramp, if you change the white color to something else, it'll make the light parts of your diffuse material that color. So for instance, if I change this to pink, all my leaves become pink. Or I can, change this one to yellow, and then I can kind of play around with how they look. Makes, some of them yellow, or parts of it yellow, parts of it pink. You have a lot of control. Let me go back. But I wanted them to come in this sort of dull green color. Cool. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to scatter a bunch of leaves all over this. So the ground material, it looks alright, but to make it look a little more realistic, I'm going to put some actual geometry of leaves on top of this. So this part down here is really only going to show through in between the leaves, and that's why it doesn't matter if it's not like a perfect texture. So let me show you how to make some leaves. So what I did, let me just open a new file here. Let's put down a plane, not a cube, a plane. Okay? And we're going to make a material. And what we're going to use is for megascans again. It's the bay leaf. So if I put down a texture, so I go megascans, I think it's this bay leaf here. So if you've ever seen these on megascans, there's sort of these big textures that have like multiple things on them. So I'm going to show you kind of how to cut those apart and turn them into individual assets. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to need the albedo. Again, we're going to put down a ACES thing and a color correct. So that goes in there. Come on. Okay. And then we need the roughness. Affliction roughness. We're going to need the normal. Enable gamma override. Put down bump map. Change this to normal. Plug that into there. And that into the bump. Okay. And then another nice thing about megascans is it comes with a translucency color, so that we don't have to do that. You know, we could do the trick where we plug the diffuse into the translucency, but this one already comes with it. So we're going to put down a color correct here, just in case we want to change it. Put this into backlight translucency color, and then just increase the weight a little bit. So, cool. So that's our texture. Let's put it on there. Doesn't show up. Great. So we also need, come on, this opacity. Now this is where this is the really important one. So we put this into overall opacity color. So let me show you what that looks like. If I just fire up my render view and put this texture on there. So the opacity channel, comes in, you know, you have these white leaves with the black in between. Wherever it's black, it's going to be transparent, and wherever it's white, it's going to be not transparent. So that's cool, but these are all still kind of stuck to this thing. So we're going to want to separate them. And the way that I do that is I make a standard Cinema 4D material by double-clicking, throw it on there so I can see it, and then in the luminance channel, you can do it in the color channel too. I just like to use the luminance. Throw this opacity. Okay, now it's a little bit low resolution, so if we come to editor and then texture preview size, change this to like 2K, it gets a lot more high resolution. Okay, so I'm going to hit NB to make my little wireframe show up. And then I need a lot more subdivisions, so let's increase this to like 40 by 40. That looks good. Okay, and then if you click on your object, hit C on the keyboard, it makes it editable. And then basically what I do is I just sort of one by one select these and delete them, delete the rest. So if somebody knows a better way to do this, please tell me, because this process can be kind of tedious. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'll just do like one leaf just to show you, and then we'll kind of cut to one that's already finished. But if this is just sort of how I figured out how to do this, there's got to be a better way to do it, but I don't know it. So we're just going to select all the polygons that have the leaf in it. Try not to get any that don't have the leaf in it. It's okay if you get a few. Okay, and then if you hit U and then P, what that does is it splits it without deleting things. So we now have, this one here is the leaf, and this one here still has that. But I don't want that. So I want to delete it. Cool. And then another thing you can do, see how the axis is way over here? I have put this little button up here, this is called Center Axis 2. I just click that and it centers it to the center of the geometry. If you don't have that, you can hit Shift-C and type center axis, and then there it is. So that's that. Basically, I just did that 15 more times. So I'm not going to do it all here because that would be super lame to watch. So you can do that yourself. And then I just, you know, label it leaf 1, leaf 2, leaf 3, whatever. Okay, so we're going to go now, we're going to jump into a file that has been a little bit more prepared. So get out of the camera. So I've got my trees lined up, I've got my stump, got the ground, cool. Okay, and then I've also got my leaves all cut out and divided up right here. Great. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to use our matrix scatter to scatter a bunch of leaves all over this. And like you know, if you've watched my previous tutorials, I pretty much use the matrix scatter for anything when I'm using a ton of clones. If you use the cloner, it works, but it just slows your computer down so much if you're using like thousands of them. And I'm planning to use like 200,000 clones. So I have a matrix object here, but I'm actually just going to redo it. So I'll show you how to do it. So you go to Redshift, Objects, Matrix Scatter, and it puts this object down here. If you're using an older version of Redshift and it doesn't have the matrix scatter, you can just go to MoGraph and put down a matrix, and then right-click and put a Redshift object on it. It's the same exact thing. This just kind of already does it for you. So for the matrix, it brings in this like thing of white squares or white cubes. We want to change it from grid array to object, and the object we want to scatter on is this ground. So we're going to bring the ground in there, and it scatters a few on there. Cool. So I want like 200,000 of them. There. So that's where all my leaves are going to be. So look at this viewport performance. 200,000 clones. Now it doesn't actually show you the geometry. It just shows you sort of a loose representation with cubes where they're going to be. Okay. So then what you do is you click on the tag that's attached to the matrix scatter, and then you go to the Particles tab and change it from Optimized Spheres to Custom Objects. And then whatever geometry or objects you put in this field here, it's going to show up in the render view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my leaves that I've pre-prepared, click all of them, click back on this here, and then just drag them in there. And then instead of sequential, I want to change this to random. Cool. So let's see what that looks like. Get into a camera here. My render view. It's going to take a second. Great. Got a bunch of leaves on there. They're all facing the same direction. Looks not great. So, oh, and I'm going to turn off my system, turn off Optics RT for now, turn that back on at render time. So, cool, so we've got all these things here, looks okay, but we want to randomize them. So we're going to put in, click on the matrix, go to Effectors, and go MoGraph, Effector, Random, and that's going to randomize some parameters here. I'm trying to remember what I actually put in my old one. So I have like 0.5, 50, 50. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is I don't want to randomize the Y because that makes them go up and down. Actually, the Z makes them go up and down. I forgot for matrix objects. So I want to randomize the X and the Y just to kind of shuffle them up a little bit. And then I want to randomize the scale a little bit. So let's change it to uniform scale and click 0.5. So it'll make some of them, about half of them bigger and half of them smaller. Cool. And then let's randomize the rotation. Let's go like 35. Let's see what that does. And let's see, what did I put in my old one? 15, 15, 360. Okay, cool. Let's just do that. 15 in the H, 15 in the P, and then 360 in the banking. So just swivel them around, just make them look a lot more random. Cool. Now those leaves look huge compared to my leaves underneath them. I don't want them to be that big. So one thing I could do, I could, in my leaves ground thing, I could just grab each of these individually and shrink them down. But a handy little feature of the matrix scatter, just delete those, is in the redshift tag that's on the matrix scatter, there's a scale multiplier here. So if I change this to like 0.5, it reduces them all by half. That looks pretty good, right? If I go down to 0.2, it's really small. So I don't know. Let's see how small I want them. I'm gonna compare it to the ground underneath it. So I'm gonna turn off the matrix. So those leaves look pretty small. So I think probably about 0.25 or 0.3 is probably right on. I want it to be about the same scale as the ones on the tree and the ones on the ground. So maybe 0.25. Let's do that. Okay, looks good. Let's save that. Okay. Now another thing that I just realized is in this prepared scene that I did not show you how to do. I'm going to turn this matrix scatter off so I can move around a little bit. Is see how there's sort of a sky back here? Or there isn't a sky. I kind of want my own. So when in my original animation, I have a camera that sort of comes down and then hits the ground, and I don't want to just see the plain old sky like that. I want it to feel like endless trees forever, right? I don't want to just feel like there's this thin line of trees and then a sky behind it. So let me turn off the bokeh here so you can see what I'm talking about here. So right now, you can see the edge of this thing, of this plane here. You can see the trees. It feels like a plane with some fake trees on it. So to make it feel farther away, or like there's a bunch more trees without actually putting a bunch of trees there, I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to get a plane, and I'm going to move it back here, make it 90 degrees, make it a lot bigger, make it a lot wider. So we're going to kind of put our own little sky back here. Let's do it like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is put a bend deformer on it, and let's go like that. And they always come in the wrong way, so I'm going to have to turn it 90 degrees. And then I want to change it from limited to unlimited so that it will bend both ways. So give it a few more, get rid of the height segments, give it some width segments to make it like that. Okay, and then I think I just took the ground texture, the same one we're using for the ground, and just throw it on there. Let's see what that looks like. Here's my render view. Let's take this ground texture, duplicate it, put it on there. Let me get out of this camera here a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Just kind of want some green, natural looking background. So right now it's kind of all squished. Let's just scale this up. So the Y, let's put this on. What does that do? 0.2. Let's do that. There. So it's just a bunch of leaves. It doesn't really matter. So you're not really going to see it too much because it's going to be blurred out. So with the camera, if I turn the bokeh back on, which is the focus, so what we're really going to be focusing on this water droplet that's going to be in the foreground, and then as the camera moves down, it's going to be focusing on the stump. So you're not really going to see too much of that. Like, yeah, you can kind of still see it a little bit there. So, you know, if I wanted to get rid of that little pop of light there, that line, I would just, you know, put another tree there, or maybe change the texture around. But you kind of get the point. It kind of fills in the gaps in the background. Okay, and let's turn our leaves back on. Maybe some of the leaves in the background will cover it up. Looks a little better, but still. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent. So now let's get on to the actual effect of having these leaves sort of explode off the ground. This is the part you've probably been waiting for. So we're going to use X particles for that. And I'm going to turn this matrix off so that I can move around a little bit. And so we're going to go to plugins, or sorry, X particles, and put down an XP system, which just gives me all this stuff. So it's an emitter, and then it just sort of, it's basically like an organizational system for using all of these things. So for the emitter, I just want the leaves to be in a kind of a circle around here. So let me take this ground, hit C to make it editable if you haven't already, and I want to make a selection, which I guess in my prepared file I had already made that selection. So basically make a selection around kind of where you want the leaves to be, and then hit V, select, set selection. So I had already done this, I guess. So and then we'll put this little triangle down that saves your selection. So you can double click it and see it. So what I want to do in my emitter, under object, I want to change the emitter shape from rectangle to object. And then for the object, we're going to use the ground. And then for the selection, specifically, we're going to put this little triangle in. So now, if I hit play, a bunch of particles are going to come out of that shape that I just selected. Does that make sense? That's really the only area I need it, is right there. Okay, so for the emission, I don't actually want any speed at all. I just want them to be born and stay there. Now you can see they're all being born at the center of each polygon. So if I go to the emitter to fix that, under object, emit from polygon center, change this to polygon area. And that'll sort of randomize where they show up. So that's going to look a lot more natural, right? Now I don't want them to just sort of be born and pop on like that. I want them to appear all as one at the beginning. So the way you do that is under emission, change it from rate to shot, and that will just emit only on the first frame, or a frame that you define with a specified amount. So right now it's going to start basically on frame 1 with 1,000 particles. There they are. Now we're probably going to need a lot more than that. We're probably going to need like 100,000. Yeah, that's a little more like it, right? Okay. So for now, let's take a look through the camera and make sure that our see how many we need with our. Let me get out of here. Get kind of close right there. So to get my leaves as the particles, because if I just turn this on, you're not going to see anything. It just looks like it did before, right? Except without my matrix object. So in order to get my particles to be the leaves, what I need to do is on the emitter, right click, and put a Redshift object. And it's literally the same process we did with the matrix object. You just come to the particles, change it from disabled to, if we change it to sphere instances, it makes a bunch of spheres. Shouldn't have done that. Go to custom objects, and then what we want to do is we want to drag our leaves in there. Now I don't want to use the same leaves that I did for the ground, because there's something extra I'm going to do with the texture, and I'll show you that here in a second. So I'm going to take this whole null that contains all of my leaves, and I'm going to duplicate it, and we're going to call it leaves particles. Okay, and going to grab all of them, and then in the emitter, I'm going to throw this into the custom objects field. And that should have them show up here. Let's again change this to random. Maybe I need to go back to the first frame and hit start, and then they'll be born. So I can see something is happening. Let me take this bay leaf texture, duplicate it, and throw it onto these. I'm just gonna do this so I can have so I can just change the color, or just delete that and change them all to red or something. There. Let's see. Well, it's not working the way I wanted to do it. So how can I see these better? Well, first let's make my particles bigger, I think. So I want emitter. Let's make the radius like 10, just to see what that does. Go forward one frame. A bunch of leaves should be born. There they are. Okay. So those look stupid right now. So we need to randomize them, their position, like we did with the matrix scatter leaves. So I think, let's see, if we go to extended data, we go to rotation, and we just set it to random. Then, if I hit play, they should all, come on, no? Let's see, there's a way to do it. Particle direction, random? I think that's what I want. Let's see. No? There's a way to get it to be born randomly. I'm trying to figure out where it is. Okay, so in the emitter, let's go to the display, change it from dots to boxes, and it'll actually give us a 3D representation of what it's doing. And then let's change the scale, the emission, put it down to 1,000, and change the radius to like 8, so you can kind of see it. And then let's move it forward one. Okay, so they are being born randomly. Huh, it must just be a viewport issue. So I think, it's doing what I want. So I think if you just change your extended data to, actually, I think we want tangential. No, we want random. And then we want to give it a object. Yeah, so random here and random there should do it. So I don't know what the deal with my viewport was. Maybe if I turn this back on, let's see what that looks like. Whoa, my particles are huge. So that's because I put them up to 8. Let's put this down to 1. And go back, forward 1. So they look like tiny particles here, but due to the size of the geometry of the leaf, so that's still big. Okay, so those are being born random. Great. Now those are way too big. So we could fiddle with the radius here to make it a little, to get it better. But I can also do the same trick as I did before in the Redshift tag. I can just scale this down to like 0.25, and it'll just globally scale all of them down. And that looks like it's about the right size. Now there's way too few of them. So let's change this back to like 100,000 and go like that. Let's see what that looks like. Bam! Okay. Now, it's weird that a lot of them are kind of like sticking up like that. I don't really like that. Let's see what it looks like with the matrix object on. Might not matter with all the other leaves. Oh, that looks dumb. Let's try this tangential. So that's better. At least they're not sticking up. So it looks like they're still randomized. Okay. Well, let's leave it like that for a minute, for now. Let's get the effect going. I'll come back and troubleshoot that in a sec. So, we've got our stuff. They're being born. They're just sitting there. Nothing's happening. Now we want them to sort of rise up. And I don't want them to all rise up at once. I want them to rise up sort of like in, randomly in spots. So we're going to use gravity for that. So under the modifiers, go to motion modifiers and pick XP gravity. And what that does is, if I just leave it at the default, let me kind of come down here, it's going to make them all just fall. I don't want that. I want the gravity to go the other way. So if I change this to negative, they're all going to be born and fall up. Cool. But they're falling up all as one, and I don't want that. So I want to change that. So in the fall off of the gravity, let's put a shader field. You could use a random field. I think you can use a shader field also. And in the field, let's use a noise. And let's increase this to like 1,000 global scale. Let's see what that does. And maybe change the low clip and the high clip. So it should be, we're basically making a noise texture. Wherever it's black, there's going to be no effect. And wherever it's white is going to be 100%. So let's see what this does. Cool, so the noise texture is maybe too small, so let's change this to like 5,000. It's a little better, maybe back to like 3,000. It's cool, let's use a different noise. Let's use like wavy turbulence, something with a little more definition. That's cool. Maybe bring the low clip down a bit, so that some spots don't rise up quite so fast. That's feeling a little better. So that's basically what I did. Cool. Maybe low clip. Maybe let's put some animation on this. Change the animation speed to like 2, see what that does. Okay, cool. So basically, that's the gist of what I did. Now none of these are spinning, so let's put a simple spin on this. Make it look a little cooler. So if we go to the extended data, and then the general data, and we put on simple spin, and just put like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. See what that does. So now it should sort of just rotate all these cubes a little bit. Maybe change these all to arrows so we can see a little more. See what that does. Let's try none. See, that looks more nice and random. It's feeling better. Okay. Now I might also want to put a turbulence in here too, so let's go modifiers, motion modifiers, turbulence. Let's see what that does. Yeah, that feels a little better. Maybe let's make the gravity not quite so strong, so instead of negative 981, let's do like negative 400. And let's vary it a little bit to be like by like 100. And let's see. That's feeling better. Okay. Now, right now it's all starting on frame 1. How do I get it to start later? So I have this camera that I've animated that's basically, let me go to camera close. I just sort of animated it. We're going to have a water droplet that sort of falls down, and it just follows the water droplet. So it comes down, and then I want, bam, right there when the water droplet hits the stump, I want all of these to rise up. So the way I would do that is, so this is frame 24. I'm going to just disable gravity and disable turbulence on frame 23. So let me put a keyframe there, and a keyframe there, and then on frame 24, I'm going to enable it, keyframe it, enable it, keyframe it, and let's see what that does. So they're all born, nothing's happening, bam, now they all rise up. Now you can see these, they're kind of hitting my stump here. It looks like on my stump, I've put a collider tag. So one thing you can do is, let me turn that off. So, bam. Now, see how they're all sort of like going through the stump? I don't want that. I want them to collide with the stump like it's actually part of the scene. So on your stump, right click, go X particles tags, and put an XP collider. And then I don't want it to bounce. Let's put that down to like 1. And then that should handle it so that these actually will collide. See how they're no longer, well, what the hell? Let's do any. Should help. It's better. So now they're not coming up through there. You can sort of see them as the ones that are coming up underneath, because this is a hollow object. There isn't like a bottom. They're kind of coming up underneath and hitting the bottom of that, but I don't think that matters. You're going to be paying attention to all this crap in the middle here, or all this other stuff here. We'll see. So let's see what this looks like. Let's get it to like right there. Redshift, render view. Yeah, see, you're probably not really going to notice that. It's too much. Well, maybe. So, okay, the other thing that I did, so that's all fine and dandy, is I had them change color as they rise up. And the way that I did that, get out of my camera here, is in the emitter, under display, under color mode, I change it to gradient parameter, and then I did it by, the parameter is speed. And then let's get rid of these and just make this one black. So the ones that are the slowest will be black, and the ones that are the fastest will be white. Let's see what that looks like. So right now they're not moving, they're all black. Bam, okay, now the ones that are moving, they're white. Now they're all white right now. I just kind of want the tips of them to be white, so let's click auto and see if that changes anything. Better. Yeah, cool. So that'll give us a map to work with. So let's get it to a frame that looks cool. So like right there. See what that does. Okay. And let's kind of get in tight here so you can see these leaves, and fire up our render view. Okay, so on our bay leaf texture, so remember I made a duplicate of the leaves ground, and then there's the leaves particles. I'm going to duplicate my bay leaf texture, and then let's delete these here, and hit apply. Okay, so now, if I open up my bay leaf texture, let me just delete this. I made this through using an older version of Redshift, so give me one sec. Ignore what I'm doing. Just putting this back into here with the new version of Aces. Okay. Oh, and before I show you the color, whoa, weird. Before I show you the color, there's one other thing that I forgot to mention before. So previously, when we built this leaf texture, we took the opacity, that texture, that black and white map, and we plugged it into the opacity channel to sort of cut out its shape. And that works if you have a few of them, but I forgot to mention that when you have like hundreds and thousands of them, it doesn't really work very well. So you have to use this thing that's called the sprite node. And basically, all it is, you just type sprite, and then it goes in between your Redshift material and your output. And you just put your, so under the path, you just put your opacity thing here. And then what that does is it does this exact same thing as the opacity, but somehow it just works better for when you have like thousands of particles. So I would just do that in all of your leaf textures. Sorry, I forgot to mention that before. I'm a little scatterbrained. It's been like months and months and months since I've opened these files at all, or you know, so yeah. Okay, so now we've got our texture in there. That's all great. Now, how do we change the color? How do we get that data, which is this black and white data, into here? Well, there's this handy little node called the color user data node. And if you put that down, and then under attribute, if you go to particles and particle color, that will bring in your color data from the particle colors, or from the X-particle simulation. So let's plug this into the output and see what happens. So sometimes you need to refresh it to get it to work. There. Cool. So now all my leaves are black and white. That's great. So what am I going to do with that? Well, we can use it as a mask between two different colors. So right now, the color we have for the leaves is sort of this greenish color. Okay, but let's duplicate this here. Come on. Let's duplicate this. Plug that into the output and make it like a totally different color. Let's make it, let's see, no, not green. Let's make it blue. See how that works. Okay, so we've got color 1, which is our base color, and color 2, which is our fun color. Let me move this to the top so you can see it better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a color mix, and in the first slot I'm going to put our base color. In the second slot I'm going to put our fun color, and then the mix amount I'm going to use our new mask. And let me get rid of this, plug this guy in there, and make sure that's all connected up. So now you see we have blue where blue leaves where everything was white, and green leaves where they weren't white. And we probably also